Pilots ignore a black woman, but when the plane malfunctions, she takes control and shocks the world. The emergency alarm on Flight 837 shrieked like a desperate scream through the passenger cabin. Red lights blinked furiously on the control panel as the Boeing 757 went into a freefall from 33,000 feet. In the cockpit, Captain Richards was unconscious, blood streaming from a deep wound on his forehead. First Officer Bradley struggled desperately with the unresponsive controls. Mayday, Mayday. This is Pacific Airlines Flight 837. We've lost complete control of the aircraft, Bradley shouted into the radio, his voice trembling with panic. Meanwhile, in the main cabin, 342 passengers were living what they feared were their final moments. Oxygen masks dangled violently. Overhead luggage flew into the aisles. Screams of sheer terror echoed from every corner of the plane. But one person wasn't screaming. Diana Foster, 34, remained calmly seated in seat 16. Her eyes locked on the movements of the falling aircraft. She looked not like a frightened passenger, but like someone who had spent 15 years flying military fighter jets. Her gaze instantly calculated descent angles, wind speed, and control surface response. She wasn't just witnessing a disaster, she was running scenarios, problem solving. 2 hours earlier at the departure gate, Diana had tried to introduce herself to the flight crew. As a certified commercial pilot and former Air Force officer, identifying herself while flying as a passenger was standard protocol. But Captain Richards had barely glanced at her before muttering to Bradley, "Oh, great, another flight attendant who thinks she's a pilot." Bradley laughed. "These diversity hires are getting ridiculous. Let her sit back there and pretend she knows what she's doing," he smirked. "Next thing you know, they'll have women landing aircraft carriers." Diana hadn't responded. She'd simply smiled politely, swallowing the insult and turning it into fuel for something far greater. What they didn't know was that she had once been the first black woman to pilot an F-22 fighter jet in combat operations, with over 3,000 flight hours under her belt, and a specialty in near-impossible emergency landings. Now, as the plane spiraled and the men who mocked her cried out in helplessness, Diana calmly unbuckled her seatbelt, her composure so unshakable that it unnerved the panicking passengers around her. A flight attendant rushed down the aisle trying to calm the chaos. Diana gently reached out and grabbed her hand. "I need to get into the cockpit, now." "Ma'am, all passengers must remain seated during an emergency," the flight attendant shouted, her voice cutting through the blaring alarm. Diana locked eyes with her. "I'm a certified pilot, former Air Force officer. If you want to survive this, get me to the cockpit." A moment stretched into eternity. Then the flight attendant, shaken but moved by the calm intensity in Diana's gaze, nodded. Without another word, she turned and began clearing a path through the panicked crowd. As they moved forward, Diana allowed herself a bitter smile. The same men who'd mocked her hours ago were now clinging to life, unaware that their best chance of survival was walking right past them. Inside the cockpit, Bradley sat alone, his hands trembling on the yoke. Captain Richards lay slumped beside him, still unconscious, a deep gash on his forehead from the first violent jolt of turbulence. "I can't do this. I don't know what else to try," Bradley shouted into the radio, his voice cracking. "We've lost all systems, hydraulics, electrical, navigation. We're in a total freefall." That's when Diana stepped through the cockpit door, eyes sharp, posture steady. Bradley turned to look wide-eyed with desperation, not yet registering who she was. "You're a pilot. Please tell me you know what you're doing." For a split second, Diana considered quoting his own words back to him about diversity hires and princesses pretending to fly. She could have let the moment speak for itself, but there were 342 souls counting on her now. Out of the seat, she said calmly, her voice a stark contrast to his panic. Bradley froze. Then recognition dawned in his eyes. He stared at her, stunned. "It's you, the quota pilot you laughed at," Diana replied coolly, sliding into the captain's seat. Her hands moved with the precision of a veteran. Switches flipped, instruments checked, control surfaces tested manually. She didn't waste time. Every insult she'd endured over the past 2 hours had only sharpened her resolve, tempered in the fire of countless combat missions these men could never imagine. Diana handled the Boeing like a surgeon. Her fingers moved across the control panel with the ease of someone who'd lived 1,000 hours in that very seat. Every adjustment was confident, exact, as if she'd been born in that cockpit. Stabilizing at 26,000 feet, she muttered, manually adjusting the flaps. Primary hydraulics are gone, but the secondary system's responding. She glanced over without breaking rhythm. "Bradley, monitor the fuel pressure. I'll handle the controls." Bradley followed her orders like a machine, his hands still trembling. Just 2 hours ago, he'd laughed in her face. Now his life rested entirely in her hands. But what hurt Diana wasn't just the words from Richards and Bradley. It was the silence from everyone else at the airport. When Richards shouted, "Hey, princess, when you grow up and want to be a real pilot, come find me. Maybe I'll let you wipe down my cockpit." The group of nearby pilots burst out laughing. One of them even filmed it on his phone, probably to share it later in some real pilots-only group chat. "That's a good one," Captain Morrison had roared, a 20-year veteran. "These girls think flying a plane is like driving for Uber." What stung even more was when Rebecca Walsh, the flight supervisor and one of the very few women in authority, walked by and said nothing. She lowered her eyes and passed quickly, pretending not to see. The female solidarity Diana had hoped for never existed. "Let her try," Richards had muttered, just loud enough for Diana to hear. "When the real turbulence hits, she'll realize women belong serving coffee, not flying planes." But what they didn't know, what none of them cared to learn, was that Diana Foster had flown damaged F-22s across war zones in Afghanistan for 5 straight years. She had landed on improvised airstrips under enemy fire. She had navigated through sandstorms in hostile territory where the smallest error could cost her entire crew their lives. She graduated top of her class at the Air Force Academy, breaking records for emergency landing simulations. Her instructors used to call her liquid ice calm, under pressure fluid in every scenario. And now, as Diana steadied the Boeing mid-freefall, she couldn't help but let a quiet smile cross her face. "Real turbulence," Richards had said. Well, here it was. "Diana," Bradley finally spoke, his voice now laced with genuine respect. "I've never seen anyone handle an aircraft like that. Where did you learn to fly like this?" She didn't even look at him, in a place men like you and Richards wouldn't dare set foot. The truth was, Diana hadn't left the Air Force because of a lack of ability. She'd been passed over for promotion 3 times, each time a white male with a weaker record was chosen instead. The official reasons, always the same, didn't demonstrate leadership potential or lacked command presence. When she was finally offered a promotion, it was for an administrative post far from the skies, far from the action. A filing cabinet of a job to lock away the most decorated officer in her class. That was the moment Diana made the hardest decision of her life, to leave the military and try her luck in civil aviation. She thought that in the private sector, merit would outweigh prejudice. She was completely wrong. "Fuel's at critical levels," Bradley reported, voice urgent. "We've got maybe 15 minutes of flight time left." Diana looked out the cockpit window. Below them stretched endless snowy mountains and dense forests as far as the eye could see. There wasn't a single commercial airport within 300 kilometers. But there was one thing she remembered, something she had noted during the pre-flight safety briefing. Her military training had drilled her to always memorize strategic locations. Somewhere in this region there was an old military airstrip abandoned since the Cold War. It didn't appear on any modern civilian maps. "Bradley, get on the radio with Denver Air Traffic Control. Declare a full-scale emergency and request all available rescue units to be dispatched to coordinates I'll give you." Coordinates. "There's nothing out here," Bradley said, confused. Diana adjusted the course firm but smooth. "Trust me. Or would you rather wake Richards up to take over?" Bradley glanced over at Captain Richards, still unconscious, blood soaking through the collar of his uniform. He shook his head furiously. "No, you're in command." For the first time since entering the cockpit, Diana allowed herself a genuine smile. "Now you get it." But what Bradley didn't realize was that Diana wasn't just flying the plane. She was executing a plan that had begun the moment Richards humiliated her at the airport. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming her honor, proving she belonged. Every move she made on the control panel wasn't just about saving lives, it was a powerful statement that they had all underestimated her. The woman they once called Princess was now holding the lives of 342 passengers and the careers of her critics in her steady hands. Diana flew the Boeing like it was an extension of her own body. Every movement was fluid and precise. Warning lights blinked, pressure gauges dropped. And finally, from a distance, a thin stretch of cracked concrete began to appear between the snow-laced trees. A stretch of silver gray began to emerge among the snowy mountains. The abandoned airstrip was about 200 meters long, barely half the distance normally required to land a Boeing 757 under standard conditions. "That's suicide," Bradley whispered, sweat dripping from his palms onto the secondary control panel. "No commercial pilot would ever attempt that." Diana manually adjusted the flaps, her eyes scanning and calculating impossible descent angles. You're right. No commercial pilot would. But Diana Foster wasn't your average commercial pilot. She was a combat veteran who had landed damaged fighter jets under enemy fire in Afghanistan. She'd led rescue missions where even the tiniest error could mean death for the entire team. Mayday. Mayday. This is Flight 837 on emergency approach for immediate landing. Bradley called out, his voice cracking with tension. Flight 837, this is Denver Control. Please confirm your intent to land on the decommissioned military runway in Zone 16. That area is off limits to civilian aircraft. Diana reached over and took the radio from Bradley's trembling hand. Denver Control, this is Commander Diana Foster, certified Air Force officer, authorized to conduct emergency landings on military territory. I am declaring a full-scale emergency and accept full responsibility for this operation. Radio silence followed a thick, tense void. Then finally, Commander Foster identity confirmed in our system. You are cleared for landing. Good luck. Bradley turned to her, eyes wide in disbelief. See, Commander, you're military. At that moment, Captain Richards began to regain consciousness. He groaned softly, trying to focus through blurred vision. What's going on? Where are we, Richards? Bradley said, voice wavering between fear and awe. That woman, the passenger, she's an Air Force commander. She's saving us. Richards tried to sit up, blood still trailing down his forehead. His eyes finally locked onto Diana, now in the captain's seat, masterfully executing maneuvers on the control panel. And then he realized this was the same woman he had publicly humiliated back at the airport. No way. Richards whispered, his face drained of all color. 6 minutes to impact. Diana muttered, eyes locked on the instrument panel. Bradley monitored descent speed. Richards, if you're still conscious, check hydraulic pressure. The plane burst through a low layer of clouds, revealing the military airstrip below, a narrow ribbon of concrete, slicing through the vast snow-covered mountains, defying the laws of physics. Diana adjusted the yoke with the precision of a maestro conducting her final symphony. Every movement drawn from thousands of hours navigating impossible scenarios. Speed 180, 170, 160. Bradley counted aloud, his voice laced with awe and terror. In the cabin, a deathly silence gripped the passengers. All 342 souls could feel the descent, the extreme angle, something no commercial flight should ever attempt. And yet somehow it remained stable, as if guided by some unseen force. 50 meters? 40? 30? Diana pulled the nose up at the last possible moment, executing a flawless flare. The main landing gear slammed onto the tarmac with a thunderous roar, followed by the nose wheel. Instantly, she deployed full reverse thrust. The Boeing shot down the narrow runway like a missile, sparks erupting from the searing hot wheels. Diana maintained total control, steering with feather-light taps on the rudder pedals. And then just 50 meters from the edge of the runway, the plane came to a complete stop. Absolute silence. Bradley stared at Diana as though he'd just seen a ghost. His hands trembled as he removed his headset. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Richards, now fully conscious, sat in stunned disbelief. Just 2 hours earlier, he'd laughed at Diana, called her a quota hire. Now he had just witnessed the most perfect landing of his entire 20-year career. How did you even do that? Richards stammered. Diana shut down the flight systems, every motion radiating a level of mastery they had been too arrogant to acknowledge. 15 years of military training, 5 years flying combat missions, 500 hours in extreme conditions, she said, turning to face them directly. All of which you could have known if you'd bothered to read my file instead of judging me on appearance. The cockpit door opened. Commander Foster. All passengers are safe. Rescue teams are on their way. See, Commander Foster. Richards echoed the truth, landing like a slap across the face. And I, Diana added calmly, am the first black woman to ever pilot an F-22 fighter jet in a combat zone. Recipient of the Medal of Honor for 5 successful rescue missions, certified trainer in emergency landing protocols. Bradley buried his face in his hands. Oh, God, what have we done? Outside, the sound of ambulance sirens and fire trucks grew louder. Red and blue lights flickered, casting flashes across the cockpit walls. But inside, there was only the crushing weight of shame and justice served at precisely the right altitude. Diana stood her gaze sharp as steel. You called me a princess, she said. You said women like me belonged with a mop, not in a cockpit. She paused, locking eyes with Richards. Well, today I just cleaned up the mess you made. Richards tried to speak, but no words came. The woman he had publicly humiliated had just saved his life along with 341 others with a level of skill he could never even dream of matching. 2 days later, morning news broadcasts across the United States opened with images of the scorched Boeing 837 sitting in the middle of Colorado's mountains surrounded by snow and emergency vehicles. Headlines blazed across the screen. Unknown female passenger saves 342 lives, turns out she's an Air Force hero. A TV reporter stood among a line of fire trucks, the scent of smoke still lingering in the air. We're standing at the site of what's being called a miraculous landing. A black woman, a former commanding officer in the U.S. Air Force, was denied access to the cockpit by the airline and went on to save every passenger on board with skills no one saw coming. The screen cut to a now viral video spreading across social media, a clip showing Diana Foster being humiliated by Captain Richards in front of a crowded terminal, his voice dripping with disdain. Your place is in the economy cabin. This is a real cockpit, not a fashion runway. Ned, a flight attendant, stepped in, tears streaming down her face. Commander Foster, all passengers are safe. Rescue teams are on their way. See, Commander Foster Richards echoed the truth, landing like a slap across the face. And I, Diana added calmly, am the first black woman to ever pilot an F-22 fighter jet in a combat zone, recipient of the Medal of Honor for 5 successful rescue missions, certified trainer in emergency landing protocols. Bradley buried his face in his hands. Oh, God. What have we done? Outside, the sound of ambulance sirens and fire trucks grew louder. Red and blue lights flickered, casting flashes across the cockpit walls. But inside, there was only the crushing weight of shame and justice, served at precisely the right altitude. Diana stood, her gaze sharp as steel. You called me a princess, she said. You said women like me belonged with a mop, not in a cockpit. She paused, locking eyes with Richards. Well, today I just cleaned up the mess you made. Richards tried to speak, but no words came. The woman he had publicly humiliated had just saved his life along with 341 others with a level of skill he could never even dream of matching. 2 days later, morning news broadcasts across the United States opened with images of the scorched Boeing 837 sitting in the middle of Colorado's mountains surrounded by snow and emergency vehicles. Headlines blazed across the screen. Unknown female passenger saves 342 lives, turns out she's an Air Force hero. A TV reporter stood among a line of fire trucks, the scent of smoke still lingering in the air. We're standing at the site of what's being called a miraculous landing. A black woman, a former commanding officer in the U.S. Air Force, was denied access to the cockpit by the airline and went on to save every passenger on board with skills no one saw coming. The screen cut to a now viral video spreading across social media, a clip showing Diana Foster being humiliated by Captain Richards in front of a crowded terminal, his voice dripping with disdain. Your place is in the economy cabin. This is a real cockpit, not a fashion runway. No, he replied, because you're the kind of person they underestimated, just like hundreds of other talented pilots who never got the chance. Diana turned to the window. Down in the hospital courtyard, hundreds of people were gathered holding signs that read, Diana is our pilot. We want our daughters flying with someone like her. She turned back to him gently. Then I accept. But this time I won't just fly the plane, I'll fly the whole system. National press conference. The entire country was watching. Diana stepped up to the podium dressed in full Air Force uniform, her rank and honor now fully restored. In front of her stood hundreds of reporters, families of the passengers, and the entire board of directors from North Sky Airlines, heads bowed in shame. Last week I was rejected because of how I look, my gender, and the color of my skin, she began. But the very things they dismissed are what saved that plane. Thunderous applause erupted. The aviation industry doesn't need more people who look good on paper. It needs people who are brave enough and strong enough to do the right thing when everything falls apart. Diana's gaze swept over the silent room. The media held their breath. Justice isn't about taking down a person, it's about changing a system. And I won't stop until every little girl, whether she's white, black, or brown, is trained to soar through the skies without ever being doubted. 1 month later, Diana Foster appeared as a special guest on 60 Minutes. A documentary deal about her life was signed by Netflix just hours after the broadcast. She was officially appointed as a lead instructor for the U.S. Air Force's female pilot training program. A photo of Diana at the controls soaring high above the clouds made the cover of Time magazine with a headline that read, "The Woman Who Landed Justice in the Sky." As for Captain Richards, he was dismissed by North Sky Airlines. Under mounting public pressure, he appeared on national television to issue a formal apology. "I was wrong. I was blinded by prejudice. And she, Diana Foster, is the finest pilot I've ever met." The end. In another interview, when asked, "Do you forgive those who once disrespected you?" Diana simply smiled. "There's no need to forgive them. I just want them to look up at the sky where women like me have claimed the space they were once forbidden.